Okay, let's get right into this. Welcome back to another Explainer, where we take the incredibly complex, intricate lore of our favorite universes and break it all down into something you can actually wrap your head around and use. Today, we are unpacking one of the most intense, high-stakes spiritual battles in the entire Dreamweaver universe. We are looking specifically at the jaw-dropping clash between Mitsuki, also known as Selene, and the Eternal Titan herself, Tempest Roma. Now, I need you to understand, this isn't just your standard physical beatdown. No, this is a masterclass in spiritual mechanics. It's psychic warfare. It is all about the absolute, terrifying power of pure presence. If you've ever sat there reading and wondered how the metaphysical rules of this universe actually operate when the pressure is dialed up to an 11, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to use the exact mechanics laid out in Book 20, completely breaking down Mode Anima and the sheer gravity of what it takes to dominate a mental battlefield. So settle in, get comfortable, and get ready to take some mental notes, because this gets wild.
Here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. We're breaking this into 4 key parts. First up, the anatomy of the soul. Second, the tactics of mind domination. Third, we'll get into the physical action with the astral body clash. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with deterrence and pure presence. Let's jump right into Section 1.
Section 1. Anatomy of the Soul. To really understand the sheer scale of what's happening in this fight, we have to start at the absolute foundation. We're dropping right into the legendary crucible of time where Mitsuki has been tasked with familiarizing herself with the elements.
Now, Tempest Roma doesn't define the soul as some vague, floaty concept. In this universe, the soul is human nature in its absolute totality. It is the literal, structural house for 3 massive powers: memory, will, and intellect. And crucially, it's the soul, working in perfect tandem with the spirit, that is entirely responsible for sustaining the vitality of your physical body. Without it, you're nothing. Furthermore, while we're in the crucible of time, we learn something huge. The soul is the specific host to the powers of time itself. Think of it like the engine room of a person's entire metaphysical existence. It drives everything. So keep these 3 specific powers, memory, will, and intellect, tucked in the back of your mind as we go forward, because they aren't just concepts. They are going to become the primary, heavy-hitting weapons in the psychic battle that is about to unfold.
So, what actually happens when that core engine room, the soul, is suddenly put under immense, terrifying pressure? Well, Tempest Roma flips the switch. She activates Mode Anima, and instantly, this incredibly oppressive force floods the crucible. We're talking the kind of pressure where the very air seems to rip apart at the seams. And notice how the physical body reacts. It trembles wildly under this pressure. Why? Because there's a massive disconnect happening between the soul and the mind. The soul, on an instinctual level, immediately senses the extreme existential danger it's in. But the mind hasn't caught up yet. It cannot comprehend the sheer scale of what's happening. Because of that disconnect, the body responds by physically trembling. It's basically an instinctive, flashing red alarm system telling the mind, hey, we need to take immediate action right now. But contrast that trembling flesh with the astral body. Once Mitsuki is actually forced out of her physical shell, the game changes. She realizes her astral body is much lighter, it's incredibly resilient, and it is completely devoid of that physical, helpless trembling. The soul, especially when it's been honed by the virtues and the art of balance, can endure a level of spiritual pressure that would literally crush flesh and bone.
And the source of that physical trembling? It's aura. It is the raw spiritual pressure radiating directly from the soul. Through Mitsuki's eyes, Tempest Roma actually begins to visually shift, suddenly appearing as a massive, towering titan. And let's be clear, this isn't a magic trick. It's not an illusion. It is the very real physical weight of Tempest Roma's radiating soul bearing down on her. With just a single glare and a sudden rush of force, Tempest Roma's aura literally acts like a battering ram. It rams into Mitsuki's physical body and violently expels her soul right out of it. It hits so hard that Mitsuki is forced to somersault backward through the air just to regain her balance in her new astral form. But this is exactly where Mitsuki finds her footing. In a flash of insight, she realizes that this state, the astral body, is the exact same state that dream knights utilize in the dream world. Suddenly, she's on familiar turf. She can tap into her vast, hard-earned experience as a dream knight and release her own counter-spiritual pressure. And as she does, that initial paralyzing fear gradually begins to diminish.
Section 2. Tactics of Mind Domination. Okay, so now they are both fully operating in their astral bodies, both releasing immense waves of spiritual pressure. The physical fight takes a back seat. This clash instantly evolves into a high-speed, utterly ruthless psychological war for literal mental territory. To understand what they're doing to each other, we have to look at the formula for mind domination. It is a devastating hybrid fusion of two distinct zodiac systems. First, you have Capricorn's territory capture modalities, operating specifically under the theme of evolution. Then, you combine that with Scorpio's much deeper, much darker theme of exorcism. Think about the gravity of what that actually means in a fight. Mind domination is not just shouting loudly to scare your opponent. It is a hyper-aggressive battle of multiple minds actively competing to conquer, claim, and occupy the literal real estate of your brain, while simultaneously exercising, or completely pushing out, your own control over it. It is, by all definitions, a hostile takeover of your very consciousness.
So, you're facing a hostile takeover of your mind. How do you survive that? Mitsuki mentally runs through the options and realizes there are exactly 3 ways to nullify mind domination. Step 1. You isolate your mind by throwing up mental barriers. Sounds good on paper, right? But as Mitsuki notes, against a true master like Tempest Roma, barriers are highly ineffective. A dominating mind can simply bypass a static wall and capture any mental territory you've already retreated from. You're just backing yourself into a corner. Step 2. Receiving morale support from an ally who has a stronger mind. This is phenomenal in a team setting. If you've got backup, lean on it, but it leaves you completely, totally vulnerable in a one-on-one psychic battle, which is exactly the life-or-death situation Mitsuki is in right now. Nobody is coming to save her. Therefore, she has to rely on step 3, the hardest, but absolute most effective method. Releasing a spiritual pressure that is factually greater than the dominating mind in order to forcefully flush out the invader. You cannot just block them, you literally have to overpower their presence with your own.
And all of this boils down to a very simple yet incredibly profound psychological equation. In this high-stakes battle of mental real estate, fear and hesitation literally lead to the relinquishing of mental territory. When you doubt yourself, when you hesitate, your soul physically shrinks, and you hand the enemy free room to occupy your mind. But on the exact flip side, fortitude and wisdom lead to the expansion of your mental territory. By standing incredibly firm and understanding the actual mechanics of the attack, using her intellect and wisdom, Mitsuki causes her astral body to physically grow in stature. Her fortitude literally expands her domain, pushing back hard against the overwhelming weight of the Titan.
Section 3. The Astral Body Clash. All right, the minds are fortified, the auras are absolutely flaring, and the two astral forms finally, physically collide.
Let's look at the actual physics of astral combat, because the rules here are fascinating and honestly pretty terrifying. When Mitsuki and Tempest Roma first clash, there was a massive, ear-splitting repulsive force that blasts them apart. Mitsuki realizes that when two competing minds are evenly matched in spiritual fortitude and they act in direct opposition, they violently repel each other. It's exactly like pushing two identical magnetic poles together. They just blast apart. But then they push through that repulsion and engage in a deadlocked power struggle, grabbing each other and blocking strikes. And this is where Tempest Roma's centuries of overwhelming experience kick in. Her alien energy begins to slowly seep into Mitsuki's astral body. In astral combat, when one soul becomes dominant in a deadlock, the weaker body begins to lose its sense of individuality and identity. Mitsuki's astral body actually begins to shrink. It starts slowly altering its form to become identical to Tempest Roma's. The sheer horror of this combat is that if your will weakens, you don't just lose the fight like in a boxing match, you lose yourself. You dissolve into a literal mimicry of your conqueror.
As her very identity is literally slipping away, dissolving into Tempest Roma's form, Mitsuki grits her teeth. She absolutely refuses to go out like this. She roars out, "I refuse to lose here. I will not lose in spirit." And with that absolute ironclad refusal, a fresh, massive rush of energy flows back into her astral body. Tempest Roma, testing her, gives her a crucial hint mid-battle. She tells her that the dominant powers of the soul can be released via the energy stored in the elemental halls of wind, time, and lightning. Mitsuki's intellect immediately grasps this. She gets it. Tempest Roma calls out, "Tempest Roma mode Anima Dragon," and instantly arms her massive dragon mode. Unflinching, Mitsuki instantly mirrors the call, assuming her own dragon mode. Golden scales erupt and coat her entire body, leaving only her face exposed for the clash.
What follows is just a breathtaking, rapid-fire chess match of transformations midair. It is so fast. Mitsuki realizes that the creative powers of the soul are truly unlimited if you know how to use them. They begin in dragon mode, utilizing those limitless creative powers to clash and test each other's boundaries. But they don't just stay there. They exchange a flurry of devastating blows and immediately alter form, shifting into the turtle warship mode. The strategic benefit here is a massive, instantaneous amplification of speed and physical force, allowing them to crash into each other ferociously in the sky multiple times like meteors. Then, without missing a single beat, they both shift into Raptor mode to claim absolute air superiority. It is a stunning, high-octane display of adapting to the elemental halls on the fly. They are matching speed with speed, force with force, and utterly refusing to cede even a single inch of mental or physical territory.
Section 4. Deterrence and pure presence. As they are clashing repeatedly in the air, trading these massive blows, we reach the true philosophical climax of the battle. Because as intense as this is, Tempest Roma isn't just trying to beat Mitsuki down. She is actively trying to teach her the ultimate purpose of accumulating all this power in the first place.
Mid-clash, Tempest Roma drops this incredible piece of historical wisdom. She says, "In ancient times, powerful nations deterred conflicts not only with military might, but with presence." She explains to Mitsuki that in the past, the greatest kingdoms didn't always have to fight to win a war. At a certain point of power, the mere sight of a kingdom's coat of arms waving in the wind was enough to strike sheer, paralyzing terror into the hearts of their enemies and weaker neighboring nations. The reputation of these nations was so vast, so incredibly imposing, that most enemies would literally turn around and flee before the battle even began.
But that raises the question, how do you actually build a presence that massive? You don't just wake up with it. Tempest Roma explains that this presence was systematically, painstakingly built over time by claiming victories in military campaigns. You have to win, and they backed up those military wins by enforcing immense economic might. But here's the kicker. The most important pillar, the one that truly forged their aura into something terrifying, was honoring their words. You build the soul of a nation by carrying out all your promises and, crucially, executing all your threats. Because they had an absolute, unbroken reputation for following through on exactly what they said they would do, no one could take their words lightly. Their word literally became physical law.
And this brings us to Mitsuki's massive, game-changing realization. A strong soul deters conflict with presence alone. That was the entire point of the Crucible of Time. Tempest Roma's terrifying Titan aura at the very beginning of the fight, that wasn't just power, that was pure presence born from a lifetime of absolute follow-through. The goal of mastering the soul, of honing the powers of memory, will, and intellect, and fiercely expanding your mental territory, isn't just so you can win a fistfight. The ultimate mastery is cultivating a soul so strong, so deeply grounded in truth and follow-through, that the conflict is deterred before a single blow is ever struck against you. As they finally descend back to the ground and Mitsuki's exhausted soul safely re-enters her physical body, she understands the lesson. True power is an invisible shield, forged by reputation and absolute conviction.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The metaphysics of Dreamweaver might involve glowing astral bodies and shifting into dragon modes, but the core truth buried in this lore is incredibly grounded in reality. A soul that honors its words creates an aura of undeniable presence. So I have to ask you, and be honest with yourself, does your reputation and presence deter the conflicts in your life? Do you honor your promises and carry out your boundaries so clearly and consistently that people respect your mental territory before a clash even begins? Think about how you are building the soul of your nation today. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I challenge you to go out there and expand your territory, and I will see you on the next explainer.